Now to the environment, and Australia's native plants and animals have thrived on our isolated continent for millions of years. However,
Indeed, introduced animals, pests and weeds are threatening many of Australia's most loved animals. We're speaking with Ian Derbyshire, Chief Executive of the Foundation for National Parks and Wildlife, ahead of Threatened Species Day this coming Thursday. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Ian Derbyshire, wonderful to have you on the program. Of course, we do continue to hear about the threat, particularly to our native species, but can you just describe for us exactly how this is unfolding and you know, are we seeing an accelerated rate of threat?
I think we are. So our native species are suffering for a number of reasons. Climate change, which is affecting everything around the world. Loss of habitat, but we do need to increase the amount of land we have for food, so we have to find a way of working with that habitat loss and looking after species. But the particular thing that's bothering us at the moment is the introduced species that have come into Australia. There's been about 650 animals introduced into Australia since the colonisation started, and around 3,000 plant species. These are competing more and more with our own native species, and so if you put the whole of that together, what we're seeing is introduced species, foxes, cats, starting to compete really quite strongly with our animals that have not had chance to adjust to the fact that they've got new predators.
so is it, you mentioned foxes and cats, which we can see some images on the screen. So obviously they become feral in the wild. Do they move into those habitats occupied by those native species that are such under threat?
That's what's happening. So feral cats, and we're talking about cats that have truly gone wild, not domestic cats or stray cats. So cats are spreading quite quickly across Australia. They find our native species an easy food source. They're developing quite quickly different hunting techniques to take the native species, and of course the native species themselves are not really used to having this predator around them. Cats, of course, have gone from being introduced as domestic pets and then gone feral.
So what are the species most at threat, particularly from, as you say, the feral cats?
Well, it's quite interesting. Even our largest species are at threat. There's been records of 5 kilogram wallabies being taken by 6 kilogram cats. So you'd be surprised. A lot of our species are actually at threat, from the very small to the very large, with the introduction of cats. Of course, the fox can take larger animals. So, and they're quite intelligent animals, and they work out how to find new food. So a couple of months ago, for example, we were talking about the loss of turtles on the Murray River Darling Basin, and the biggest loss of turtles is foxes predating the eggs that the turtles have left and gone off to leave to incubate.
So are there things that people can do on an individual level to help make a difference here? Because I imagine that particularly pet owners as well would have a level of responsibility around what they're doing.
Look, there are things people can do. Starting at home, it's useful to just make sure that your own animals are under control. Put a bell on a cat, put 2 bells on a cat, so that the species it might be stalking have a chance to escape, understand something's in the way and get away. Possibly even turn your own garden into a bit of a wildlife haven, control your pets in an area of the garden, and maybe plant some native species and actually just create a bit of a safe spot for some of the wildlife. That's really quite important, because one of the things that people can do on that small scale, on a much larger scale, are create wildlife corridors. So it might be through your own backyard, or join a community group. There's some fabulous community groups in Australia working on creating large-scale corridors. For example, in the Upper Lachlan catchment, they're working to create safe corridors for migration from the low forest to the high tablelands. So look after your own patch, join a community group. By all means, make a donation and put some money forward that will enable more research and grants to happen. And become aware. So have a look what's going on, and then maybe even join some education group.
Yeah, you speak of those safe zones, if you like. I mean, I've seen that myself, obviously, driving up the East Coast, where you have, on the major highways, you have bridges for koalas,
Yes.
for instance, to get
Yeah.
across the highway
Yeah.
safely. And you're also talking about, for instance, the pygmy possum in the mountains,
Yep.
that you're doing some work there to help their habitat.
Yeah, well, the pygmy possum's quite interesting in that it's unique to the alpine areas of Australia, so it's got a very small habitat. The males and the females separate at different times of the year and migrate, and then they have to come back together again to mate. So crossing the road is a major problem for an animal of that size. Foxes and cats are also causing a population problem. So we're having to introduce different programs, and this just gives you an idea of what is involved in saving species. So captive breeding programs, understanding how you can actually protect the genetic pool and have animals to release. Tunnels under the road so that when they're migrating they can pass safely under the traffic and not get run over. And also maybe fox baiting, cat removal programs to make sure that the area they're in is safe.
Well, plenty of great ideas out there for everyone to be able to take up and get on board with. Wonderful to have you here speaking with us in Derbyshire.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.